The Butterfly Effect by Nikayla Sarai. Chapter 17. Moonlighting CEO. So? Logan asked, his voice echoing oddly in the room. Roman worked to keep his breathing steady, fighting the hollow feeling in his stomach as he hung up. For Logan. He nodded to himself, keeping his eyes shut. "Congrats, Specs," he said, placing both the phone and washcloth on the counter. It would be all right. He'd figure it out for his audition. "You can rest easy. Your final's been moved to 2. A cool touch gently rested on his shoulders, tugged him backwards before he heard a response. Roman gasped, shivering as the familiar wave of cold washed over him. God, cold! His heart jumped into his throat as he opened his eyes in time to see the rainbow time stream vanishing like fog clearing on a sunny day, leaving him with his hands resting on an unfamiliar cherry-stained tabletop. This wasn't the vanity in his dressing room for the Phantom. His knees buckled, sending him to the floor with a muffled moan as his stomach tried to twist itself inside out, all of his muscles contracting violently enough that Roman found himself curled into a ball, gasping for breath as chills ran up and down his back, sending ice along his cuts and scrapes. Adjusting to the new timeline. He remembered the genie saying his body would react to changes, but this... It was like suffering from a bad case of food poisoning on top of running a marathon. Fire shot into Roman's wrist, burning like a hot coal had been placed on his skin. He jerked, inhaling raggedly as he painfully twisted his arm to see the burning spot bubbling like boiling water, inky colors rising up and spreading across his skin to form 2 bumblebees, one holding a comedy mask, the other a tragedy mask, while above the insects, "To be or not to be," scrawled itself into his skin in an elegant script. A tattoo? Roman blinked, moving a shaky finger to touch the mark. Why would he... He shuddered, sides aching as he gasped for breath, his mind whirling as memories from the new timeline crashed down on his head. And then... Apollos proclaimed in that "I'm famous, you need to obey me" snooty tone of his, "You can't eclipse the great Apollos with a nobody." An unfamiliar, no, it was familiar, voice proclaimed. Roman remembered hearing it before. It was... He tilted his head, partially straightening from his curled position as Remy laughed, sprawling across the dressing table above him, his foot idly tapping Roman's shoulder. And you can bet who interrupted our resident diva. Roman worked to gather his breath, no longer from the effects of the time stream, but from laughing so hard tears were streaming down his cheeks. His mouth twitched in a smile. "Jericho interrupted?" he asked, vaguely picturing the easygoing understudy to the diva, a.k.a. Apollos, who played Jefferson in Hamilton. Wait. Hamilton? He was in Hamilton? How? Oh. He'd been unable to make auditions the first time around due to his contracted role as the Shoot. Roman's stomach twisted unpleasantly. Because he was here now. That had to mean he hadn't gotten the role. The memory whirled up to the forefront of his mind, almost the same as the original timeline. The corners of his eyes tightened. He had made the same mistake as the first time around. He'd been late to the audition due to both a heavy rainstorm and his bike running out of gas in the middle of crossing a bridge. The difference between getting and not getting the role? Money. He'd been strapped for cash in this timeline and couldn't afford to grab a taxi. Instead, he'd run through the rain to the audition, managing to arrive just as his name was being called for the final time. He hadn't had the chance to freshen up or get into the zone, and it had shown. There had been no callback this time around. Instead, Roman had gone on to try out for Hamilton and landed a small part with Remy as one of the ensemble. Remy laughed, rolling on his side, arm dropping over the side of the table. "Jerry!" interrupted. "You can't replace Apollos." Our sweet summer child cried in that whiny tone he gets when he's trying to please. He twisted his hand, brushing Roman's hair as he pulled himself back to his feet, shifting his body to give Roman a place to put his hands on the narrow table. But then he had to add, "Only I can replace him." Remy gave an elegant gasp, going into a mock swoon, the back of his hand over his eyes. He chuckled, sitting up. "Like, girl, what a way to burst your man's bubble." Roman snorted, fighting to not break down in giggles again as he grabbed the chair, using it as a stool so he could remove his boots easier. Did Snotty McGuile burst a vein? Served Apollos right, walking out with Jericho, his understudy, the same evening there Hamilton ended up in the hospital with appendicitis, while his understudy sat in a jail cell for drug possession and a DUI. Roman had seen Apollos and Jericho show up just before the curtains rose. He'd heard their rising voices quickly muffled as the music started, but they'd vanished before the final curtain. Only now could he get the story from Remy as to why they'd dared come back and what had happened during the show. "Not quite. Apollo Cito turned red as a tomato, at least. But what can you expect from the smitten couple? He lets things slide." "Two peas in a pod they are." Roman shook his head, setting his boots under the table, lightly touching the tattoo on his wrist, before moving his hand up to his neck where the crown necklace rested, his fingertips brushing over smooth skin. Huh. The wound on his neck was gone. He rolled his shoulders. From the lack of pain, he and Logan hadn't gotten into that fight in this timeline. He raised a hand to his hair, much longer now, nearly touching his shoulders, the perfect length for Hamilton. Butterflies danced in his stomach. Hamilton. He'd just come off stage from playing the lead, having convinced Cale, their director, that he could fill in until Michelangelo recovered. Remy grinned wide as he pushed up to one elbow. "Ha! More like two berries in a patch. You should have seen the color drain from their faces when your man Lolo rapped his way into stardom. Quickest tongue in the East. They're heckling about bringing in a nobody who doesn't know the difference from stage left and stage right hushed up right quick." Logan? Logan was on Broadway with him? Roman brushed the tattoo again, hiding his confusion with a smirk when no answers came. What, Apollo Copolyps thought we couldn't replace him for his rapping skills? As if. Remy languidly leaned against the mirror, playing with one of his curly locks as he idly shuffled through the familiar newspaper clippings of Roman's New York research into the author who wrote The Haunting of Anxiety, his eyes going sad as he traced a finger around the image of Virgil. Exactamundo! He thought we'd come begging on hands and knees and with buckets of money, but wham! Remy shuffled the papers to hide the author's face. Denied! Roman brushed his crown necklace again, also glancing at the clippings, chest growing tight. Remy had given him that picture of Virgil, dressed in a black and purple suit. The dancer had known Virgil and had helped the young author with research when he'd worked at the Starbucks near the guy's apartment. Remy had been the one to bring up the auditions for the movie to Roman this time around when they first met up for choreography camp. Said he had the right spark. Ha! But Roman had gotten the minor role of obnoxious next-door neighbor. It was a far, far cry from being cast as the star. No London trip for him. Instead, he'd be filming in 6 weeks when the B crew returned to the city for the flashback scenes. And then? He asked, jumping up onto the table to lean against the mirror with Remy. Logan happened? Remy touched the tip of his nose. Yes, sirree. Apollo Cito looked positively gobsmacked when your girl Lolo hardly seemed to breathe on stage. That's speed! He sighed, going starry-eyed. Like, girl! Apollo Cito's baby blues nearly popped out of his head when he heard that. He picked up a half-empty Starbucks cup, saluting Roman. Way to go, Ro. My darling Prince of Surprises. How could you hide such a talented, tall glass of yesness from Broadway? The door slammed open, and a figure in a magenta coat darted inside, quickly shutting the door and locking it, cutting off the clamor of voices from the hallway. Ah, speak of the angel, and so he appears, Remy proclaimed with a wicked smile, sliding off the table. Our savior of rap, humbly gracing some of the ensemble with his glorious presence. Having trouble with your new adoring fans? The figure growled, whirling, tugging fitfully at his coat, his long dark hair falling over his face. His tattoo-less face. Angel? Hardly. He looked up, eyes flashing as he spotted Roman. Next time you suggest I crash your Broadway play, Roman, remind me to say no, Logan growled, nearly pulling the buttons free of the jacket in his struggle to get it off. How am I supposed to explain to my company that their CEO is now moonlighting on Broadway? Roman snapped his mouth shut with a click, before Specs could see him sitting there positively slack-jawed. Logan? This confident man, who gave off an intelligent-looking vibe even while in Jefferson's magenta-colored coat, standing before him hardly looked like his wiry, angry coffee boy. He huffed, blowing his own hair out of his eyes as he gave Lo the once-over. Not going to prison had done him good, it seemed, seeing that he was now a CEO? Roman smirked, pushing off the table to come to Logan's aid. Oh, come on, Lo. It's not like I had to drag you from work to help me. You came quite willingly, I recall. I did wonder where you vanished to, though. What was Logan the CEO of? He grabbed onto the coat, brushing Logan's fingers with his own as he helped him to remove it. A shiver ran through him as the touch instigated another flood of memories. CEO. Logan had created his own SPECS company, building it from the ground up after college. It originally specialized in creating environmentally friendly sources of energy, though he'd recently branched part of his company to help Pat out in researching safe natural medicines and creating better tech for hospitals. Moonlighting? Remy grinned. Honeybee, are you saying you're joining the cast? That's fantabularistic. Logan blinked. Fantabularistic? He muttered under his breath, glancing to his wrist and the 221B Sherlock tattoo there. That's not a word. He shook his head, meeting Ro's eyes. Where did you think I vanished off to, Ro? The moon? Roman pursed his lips thoughtfully. Ah, I didn't know you brought your rocket with you today, Lo. Here I was thinking you just returned to the labs. I wish. No. With how his new adoring fans swamped him, I still thought you were in the building, Lolo, Remy said. Logan glowered. Don't call me that, Rem. He mimicked the dancer's voice. Remy nearly dropped his cup. What? Okay, girl. First of all, that voice thing was amazing. Can you teach that? Not really, and no. I wasn't swamped by fans until just barely. Logan crossed his arms. The director, Cale, pulled me into his office as soon as I left the stage, practically shoved a pen in my hand and contract in my face as soon as the door shut. Yes! You signed? Logan flushed, ducking his head. Why would I? Roman grinned, folding the coat over a chair as a memory sparked. Why wouldn't you? Who's the one who went to the original cast production with specially designed glasses and specifically selected seats to secretly record the play so he could rewatch it whenever... He cut off as Logan slapped a hand over his mouth. It was Lo's obsession with the play that had inspired Roman to try out for it when auditions reopened. Why shouldn't he try out for the one theater production that had actually caught Microsoft nerds' attention? It was also exactly for that reason he'd suggested bringing in Logan to play Jefferson. Not only had he memorized the songs within the day, but he also knew most of the scenes by heart. He'd heard Logan using his mimicking abilities to put on one-man shows in the shower while they'd still been roommates. "Just announce it to the whole world, why don't you?" Logan hissed in Roman's voice. Remy shoved off the table, falling to his knees at Logan's feet, practically kissing his boots. "Dude! You gotta let me watch your bootleg. I've been dying to see the original cast. Is it in HD? Good quality? I totes need to know, Lolo." Roman pulled the hand down, breaking free easily from his grip. "Remy is hardly the whole world, Specs." Logan rolled his eyes, exhaling. "Point, I suppose." He frowned down at the dancer, taking a step back. "How good are you at keeping secrets, Remus?" Remy pushed effortlessly to his feet, making a face. "Girl, not cool. It's Remy. I don't need people asking me if I'm a werewolf." Logan ran a hand through his hair, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards. "And I'm not Lolo. Don't call me that, and I don't call you Remus. Deal?" Remy sent finger guns his way. "Totally. Deal. Call him Specs," Roman offered, seeing Remy struggling with a nickname. "I do. He doesn't seem to mind it as much." He flashed a grateful smile, eyes sparking. "Deal, Specs. No more Lolo. I gots it." He tapped his temple. "So the bootleg?" "You didn't answer the question," Logan stated, moving around the dancer to the table to grab a pair of black-rimmed glasses from the drawer, quickly slipping them back on, completing the professional nerd look before he undid the ties of his shirt to remove the rest of his costume. Remy mimed zipping his mouth shut. "My lips are sealed." "He's going to tell our fellow dancer Nate as soon as he watches it," Roman supplied, grabbing Lo's clothes from the closet and setting them on the desk. "Hey! It's the truth." Remy moaned, falling against the wall. "Babe, you're ruining my chances at seeing an actual good quality bootleg. Hush! I'll sign a contract of secrecy if needed, Speckaroo. Just please, I need this. Like, I will totally die if you don't show me need this." Logan shook his head, raising an eyebrow to Roman as he adjusted his glasses. "Does he get this from you, or are all actors this dramatic?" "'Scuse you, honey." Remy pushed off the wall, twirling to Lo with a ballerina's grace. "I am a dancer first. Acting is a side gig." "So he is always this dramatic," Logan sighed, pinching his nose. "Like I need another extrovert in my life." He smiled, holding out his hand to Remy. "Lucky you, I'm in need of someone to help me learn the production numbers, since I'm now your official Jefferson. Teach me, and I'll let you see my copy." Remy laughed, grabbing Logan's hands. "You're about to learn from the best, Specs. Come on! No time like the present." He darted for the door, dragging a surprised Logan after him. "Hey, wait! No! Roman!" His voice trailed down the hallway.